Welcome to Sliver and Bite TV. Today we're making Sliver and Bite's take on nachos. We're going to start by creating a cilantro drizzle. Prepare your jalapeno by cutting off the cap, slicing down the center lengthways, and then getting rid of the pith and the seeds from the inside. It just needs to be a rough cut because this is going into the food processor anyway. And that can just go on the top of the Greek yogurt. Now for the star of the dish, the coriander or cilantro. So just take the leaves off of the stem. You want about half a cup. I'll speed it up because this could take a while. And I'm sure you've heard it by now, but those people that can't stand cilantro, it's actually genetic. It actually does taste like soap to some people. In saying that, my sister, who was always dead against coriander, made this drizzle and she fell in love with it. Time to get out the food processor, and I'm just scooping out the Greek yogurt and jalapenos, pouring in the lime juice, and then adding the half cup of coriander, along with the spices, salt, pepper, and cumin powder. You want to start on a low speed because it'll just splash up everywhere. Then you can increase the speed. Wipe down the sides just to make sure we've got all of that coriander and any other ingredients that may have come up the side. And then start on low, increasing the speed. One last wipe down. And the final blitz, just to make sure that the drizzle is fully incorporated. And then pouring it into a jug to drizzle over the top, and also a little ramekin so you can dip. Now it's time for the cheesy bechamel. So we start off by doing a traditional bechamel, but then we amp it up with extra cheese to really make the nachos sing. We start by melting down the butter and bringing to a gentle simmer. And you'll notice that I will take the pot off and on there. You'll see that it is still simmering even though I've taken it off the induction. So you want to make sure that you are ready to either turn off and on your heat, or if you're using gas, to remove the pot when it starts to boil, because if you have a heavy set base, it'll continue cooking and you don't want to burn your butter. We're going to start adding the plain flour into the butter. Make sure you're only doing it with a teaspoon or two to begin with. Then you can start increasing it once you've stabilized that butter. You'll want to make sure that you fully incorporate the flour you have in the pot before you add in your next teaspoon. It does take a little bit of time, so make sure you've got your mixing arm ready. As you can see, the amount of flour that I'm putting in is roughly a tablespoon now. Just adding in that last tablespoon of plain flour. It's now time to start incorporating the milk. You'll notice that I'm using a 1/3 cup to measure it in. You want to make sure that you have control over the amount of milk that goes in, because as you'll see, the milk seizes up. And at this stage, it's best to have it either off or on a very low heat. Again, just a reminder, make sure you're fully incorporating the previous 1/3 cup of milk before you add in your next. And as I'd mentioned, you're actually seeing me adjust the temperature and turning the induction off quite often. Now that the mixture is stabilizing, you'll notice that I'm putting in 2 of the 1/3 cups. And shortly, I'll be able to start pouring the milk in. So that's the last of the fresh milk. After this is incorporated, I will start adding in the evaporated milk, and this will help to prevent it from splitting. And just the same as the fresh milk, you want to make sure that you've taken the chill out of this. 30 seconds on reheat in the microwave. And now I'm just adding in some salt, pepper, paprika, and some mustard powder. As always, make sure you're doing a taste test. You can adjust the flavorings as you wish at this point. It's time to start adding in the cheese now. So we're putting in just 1/3 of what you have there, of the sharp cheddar, and 1/3 of the Parmesan. This will be the last time I mention it, I promise. In this video anyway. Just remember, make sure you're incorporating all of that cheese before you add in your next batch. So we're adding in half of the remaining cheese and incorporating. And now the last of the cheese. Once that's fully incorporated, you can take off the heat and leave to the side. To bring this back to life, you just put it on a low heat, and if it is struggling to get back to the consistency you want, you're able to put a little bit of tempered milk in. Now it's time to get onto our guac salsa. Start by preparing the tomato, making sure you're getting a lot of that pith and the moisture out with the seeds. And then we're just going to dice that up. we're also going to finely dice a shallot. We're going to put a quarter of this in the little ramekin because we're going to sprinkle this over the top of the nachos once the meat is on. And then the rest can go over the top of the diced tomato. Time to prepare our avocados. So slice around the pit and then scoop out with a spoon. Up to you, you can either push the pit out by squeezing the avocado or use the unsafe method and whack a knife into it and twist. You'll see that I use two techniques to mash the avocado. The first technique, I mash it in the bowl, and the second technique, I mash it on the board. The bowl started getting a little too full, so it was easier to do it on the board and then scoop it in. Give that a little mix, and now we're going to squeeze some lime over. We're going to add some salt, some pepper, and we're also going to finely dice another jalapeno. Another taste test, and we can put that off to the side for later. Time to do a little quick cleanup. And it's time to start preparing our tortillas. I'm putting them in the oven on a baking tray. Putting some cheese down first just so that the chips don't slip around and fall into the bottom of the oven. Then sprinkling some cheese before putting on some more tortillas. Last little bit of cheese, and then that's in the oven for roughly 5 to 10 minutes just to crisp up those chips and melt the cheese. And in the oven I've had a pulled pork. This was ready-made from the shop, so all I had to do was reheat it at 200 degrees and then shred it apart. And now I'm adding a 4-bean mix and some corn. Chips are nice and crispy, and just placing that on a board because I'm preparing a share platter. Just tonguing on some of that pulled pork. And sprinkling over the shallot. Putting on some sour cream and a dollop of the guacamole salsa mix. And I've reheated the bechamel cheese sauce and just drizzling that over. Quite a healthy portion. Trust me, you're gonna want it. Time for the coriander drizzle. And adding the ramekin of coriander drizz. Sprinkling over some coriander leaves. And then a quick little zigzag of sriracha. Take a look at that. That is restaurant quality nachos. So I've got my housemate coming in for a bit of lunch. Nachos, 100% best shared, that's for sure. I find it's a very communal meal. And honestly, I didn't make enough of that coriander dip. It is absolutely divine. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you soon.